This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'll call to order the April 10th, 2023 work session to order at 6:30 PM. Any additions or to the agenda tonight? Questions? If not, would anyone like to move to accept the agenda?
Mr. Mayor.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Norman. Motion made by Counselor Webb. I'll call the roll. Counselor Ash.
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Counselor Norman.
Aye.
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Mayor Hobart votes aye.
Oh, come on, Carl.
So, moving right into the work session, council priorities. You all have a copy in front of you. So,
So I,
was this the same copy, Josette,
no, I
you
keep the
sent?
notes and then I moved the items that have been completed since January to the bottom.
Oh, good. That's what I was
Yeah.
hoping we would have tonight for us. So
Yeah.
the ones that have been completed. So
Yeah.
good.
Oh, well, I had that on mine.
Yeah,
Seemed like they were shorter, but yeah. Okay, go. Josette, you want
I
to?
think she meant from last quarter.
the one I sent in the email is the same as this.
Oh.
It's printed you big copy. So that you can see
Okay.
them up close.
Yeah.
So do you guys want me to go through each one or do you just want to ask me questions about the ones? What do you want? There's,
I wouldn't mind starting at the top and going down if
okay.
you mind.
Not to be lengthy.
So the Corey Hill, I and the Clatsop manhole water fountain, we did have a high manhole event, not in this last deluge, but in the one a month and a half ago, but it didn't cause issue. They did do the investigation of the manholes during the next rain event. They did kind of go block part of them. They couldn't get all of them. So they've been kind of tracking that. And then the storm drain project at Third to reduce Columbia water, the engineers are still figuring that out because we're going to hopefully put a catch basin somewhere by Deflis's. They're designing that and then run into the storm system that already exists kind of downhill from that to try and keep that manhole from being inundated with water if we can catch it and dispel it. Kind of related to that hill and water, on 6th Avenue, I got a call from a gentleman who had issues with water on his property, basically running from the top of 6th, like the neighbors on the uphill side, down across his property and then going down towards John Steepleys and kind of washing out. He had put in his own little catch basin, but it wouldn't keep up. And he wanted to put a berm the entire way 6th Street. And I'm like, can we come visit you? So Robert, the engineer, and I went up and visited him. And ultimately, we're going to be putting in a ditch. There's definitely 2 springs on 6th Street that are just flowing water all the time, totally not connected to rain, that are going into wherever they can find a nook and cranny, which I'm assuming some of it would be sewer. So we're doing a project to get it to the draw, that kind of waterlogged. So hopefully the 3rd Street one, the 6th Street stormwater fix should start to help us kind of not have the influx on Columbia that we're having. But that's still part of the overflow and all the things are in the springboard project. So Louisiana PRV removal, like that says still it'll happen when the connection project moves. They're done with the design of the connection project. We're working now on like what the initial bid docs would be for the gravel connectivity part, logging, gravel connectivity part, all of that, so that we can actually connect the 2 roads. And then I did talk to Casey Garrett. He asked us to include a bid alternate in our bids when we ultimately go for surfacing of Louisiana, which once we get the contract documents done, we'll know if the ARPA money will cover the initial bringing it all up to road width and base requirements, or if it would be that and surfacing. We'll just know once we know what the project and the estimates for that. So Casey had asked when we go to resurface it, if we could do an ad alternate for the contractor to price out paving Mellinger from Stony Point to Louisiana, and then Mellinger from Stony Point, the distance, 2 different bids. So see if that's something that the county could put the bill for those residents at that time. Should it be someone already mobilized here to do ours?
So paving all of Mellinger then?
Well, we're going to get bids for that.
Oh,
Whether the county will have the funds at the time when the bids come down to do Stony Point to Louisiana or the entirety of Mellinger, I would think that would be a smart move to just, when we're mobilized with the paving contractor, to have
yeah.
them do it, but we'll see what they have for money. The lake bathroom repairs are going, the porta potties show up tomorrow. We got 1 ADA and then 1 standard, and they'll be serviced weekly. And we will be locking off the lake bathrooms so Mitch can take the messed up bottom of the wall in between them out and replace that with the block isn't going to work because we couldn't get a mason to even bid it. So we're going to do, he's found a product, and I think it's like kind of like what bath board is in a bathroom where it can get wet. You know, it's sometimes behind tile. And that's what we're going to put on the bottom. And then the cove molding, when we redo the floor, that will cover that as well. There's been a lot of water damage on those. And then we're still looking into whether or not we can afford to get new partitions for the like bathroom partition wall between the toilet and the sink, because those are 28 years old and gross. I'm like, you can't magic eraser them. And Mitch is like, no. And they're horrible, like putrid beige color, which just makes it kind of, because we're trying to match all the bathrooms into being gray walls because it matches the flooring, and then a white ceiling, just to kind of keep the uniformity and be able to buy paint in bigger quantities in all the restrooms. So as we redo them, that's the pattern we're going with. So we're still working on that, but he should be getting starting ripping into them tomorrow. Springboard sewers CDBG project. So as you guys know, we're still in the design phase of this. That's wrapping up. We're waiting for our biological assessments and our reviews of NOAA and NIMS to look at the work we're doing and how they relate that to satisfying their fish quality requirements. We did talk to Lydia, who is our grant administrator through Colpack, Columbia Economic Team Colpack. Lydia is what Mary's position was in the past. And so we're preparing for going into construction, preparing our project notification intake for going for the construction grant in July, because you have to turn in July 1 is the opening of that next ask. And so we had a powwow Zoom meeting, Angie, Robert, Lydia, and I, to kind of talk about all the pieces that we need to get done for that so we can move right in from designing it to be asking for the construction funds to implement it. And that the stormwater master plan, I don't know, it's because it's the same color, but they're not together for Louisiana. That's part of the design happening. So there's a lot going on with Louisiana that we're finding out as they build, that the configuration of the sewer there, while it works great for the west side, the lots on the west side of Louisiana, it does not work for the lots on the east side of Louisiana because of topography. It slumps off. The developer had asked us, would we allow him to put in grinders? And we said no, because invariably, one, it's not in our public works standards, but two, if we let him put in grinders, the homeowners are going to think they're going to buy it not knowing they're there. When the grinder goes south, which is basically grinds up your sewer so that it's more easily flows, doesn't have any of the heavy stuff, and then can be pumped uphill to Louisiana, if that's what he wanted to do. Invariably, the homeowner, when the grinder dies, they're going to be like, that's the city's problem. And we're going to say, no, it's your problem. And it's going to happen for every house on the east side. So Robert put together a design for an Oregon Avenue sewer line. Should one of the developers want to do it themselves? We're not going to take this on because it doesn't really currently benefit us, but I wanted him to have like a first draft of a option should a developer want to put it in. So basically it would be coming down Oregon from I Street all the way to E, and then it would directionally bore under Louisiana and hook up to directionally bore from Oregon to Louisiana and hook up to that manhole there, because then it can actually, it isn't that the pipe's undersized, it's the configuration, taking it, pumping it, all those homes back up to Louisiana was just not going to be feasible. So so I'm talking about Louisiana, it's not stormwater, it's more sewer, but I'm just bringing it up because it's part of the whole thing. So that's kind of in the works. And then so we're waiting on the engineer to give staff a memo that says, this many homes can further connect on the west side. East side homes are going to be required to either develop or hook to Oregon should it be developed by other developer with a reimbursement district or something. But we're getting a lot of calls. The developers want to get all their stuff lined out for the future, and that's something we need so that we don't get stuck in the backwards with that. So part of the design is the stormwater. It's not really a master plan. It says master plan in here, but it's just designing for all of the stormwater built somewhere on the whole developable hill of Louisiana. So there's engineering working on that. The water main upgrade, that's the water that we will replace before surfacing, and that's being incorporated into whatever the construction plans are. Not so much that the construction firm would do it, although we could always add it as a bid alternate, but that it would be happening simultaneous with the upgrades up there. And then that's Louisiana North-South connection. So the Millhouse sewer line replacements, once the rain stops, the connections can happen. And in talking to Ruben and the engineers, because the city allowed those people to build homes over the existing sewer line, because we were the permitting agent way back when. They believe it'd be safer to have us pay Robert Watts to reconnect those people. Because otherwise we're going to get the one house that doesn't have the financial capability to do it. Then we're going to potentially, they're going to go, well, I don't have the money and you're going to fine me if I don't connect within 6 months. And then we're going to be in some sort of legal battle when it will cost a little bit of money, but sewer does have the money to use for this specific type of purpose. So that's what we're hoping to, and I'm not saying it doesn't have to be Robert, but we would put together the project and then bid it out. Typically it's somebody local because no one wants to mow out here for,
Just a heads up, you do have the Vernonia Housing Rehab Fund that can be utilized for that as well. For those.
for the reconnects.
For the reconnects.
So that's a lot, that is an option, but it is a little bit more, if not a lot more work to have individuals getting specific things, right?
That's on us, on community action.
Oh, it is. Okay.
So we would do all the paperwork for it. You would just have to identify who it is and we just have to go the process as long as they are income qualified.
Right. And I think we've got a mix up there. So then I don't know. I mean, on one hand, the guy that can't afford it, you're making him pay for it. On the other hand, you're helping the other guy out. So.
But it's a loan. It's not a gift.
Right.
Grant.
Right.
Seems to me, I remember they're about 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Aren't a couple already hooked?
One chose to be hooked up at the time. The really tricky one is going to be Fred's because there's a slab, but it's just got to be what it's got to be. He can't stay connected to they were trying to figure out and like looking at it, could they hook Estella's, which is the first house, and Fred's, and then come to like some bigger together line out of the slab and just not deal with, they're trying to figure out a useful way, efficient way to do it. So
Can we legally do that?
you can make it ride the property line. And they can both, they'd have to sign it.
City code forbid doing,
No, because we have a few other ones that are that way. And I'd have to look into that, but they're just trying to solve the problem and not have. And the other kind of, we haven't seen inside the pole building that he's got behind his house, but if that thing's full, potentially that has to be emptied before we could, so they're trying to come up with how can we do it?
all right.
That could be fun.
Yeah, we don't want to have to unbox the pole building. Street improvements execution, so that's ongoing. And then one of the kind of, that's basically the SCA list of, that Ben's come up with of the next, 5 project areas for the next 5 years. One of the things that we talked about, the next one's really on the books are F, kind of up off of E. Is it G?
GF.
GF. But which I think G and F can happen. One of those was we were talking about doing G and F and then the E, doing all of those kind of that are up in that hill. But we don't want to do E until we fix the sewer, get whatever needs to happen with sewer. Because right now, the way it 90s off Louisiana, there's a couple of other tweaks that we could do to the sewer to get it down and upsize to take on. If they fully built out the entire Louisiana, what size pipe would we need? While it's ugly, let's do that. So we don't want to, it may be hit or miss what staff proposes, or I don't know, has Public Works looked at it? The most recent one?
We haven't here lately, no.
Okay, so I might have Ben resend that because it'd be good. And we can propose what staff's thinking about. They could say if they concur with that. And then we could take it to council because oh, they are closing. That was a notice on here. I'm sorry. Anyway, that application is going to be ready quicker than it.
It's probably not closure.
So,
Sorry, it just,
It's probably just that he was gonna send additional info.
oh, maybe that's it. It just popped up and said something. But I thought it said closure, but maybe it's just information about the closure.
Information. I don't know why it's this way.
That's kind of, we want to get ahead of that so that when we have the next opportunity to apply, we're ready to go with our app. With the maps, it's been through council, all the steps so that we're first on the turn in, since we've missed so many. Crack ceiling everywhere, that's the same. They're coming up with, Austin was out kind of perusing, looking for the next 80 hours for this summer. And then we talked about, in addition to the 80 hours, that's simple cracks. He wants to play around with and have a few more hours to try and see what it would look like to fix some alligatoring. Where there isn't moisture underneath, it's just been moisture before and split apart and kind of alligatored. So we thought that isn't a bad idea because maybe it's maybe they could do it efficiently. Maybe he tries one and is like, this is a mess and it doesn't work and we should do something else. So we said, go for it. The I-9 master plan, that's in-house. It's not really a master plan that we've sent out to anyone. And staff's still gathering data to send that on to Public Works Committee. So Ben and Jeff and Chris have been going through missing areas of the community and doing, like, looking at old plans, Jeff's memory, and like trying to get that on all the layers so that it's all out of Jeff's head. Because he remembers if you put a valve in here for water, sewer, storm, what exists. They're doing a really good job and it's working out. They're popping in multiple times a week, or Ben will say, got a couple questions, and send them a picture of the area. And so hopefully we're going to have a really good product. He's created a new like layer, kind of sidebar GIS that's utilities only, that will be for staff. It has some of the same layers, but then it has also more in-depth layers that we don't really want for safety purposes, some of them now. So that's going pretty good.
I got like a half-hour tour of that the day you were at the senior center. I was like,
He's super excited. And it's not something everyone wants to listen about. So poor Ben's trying to sell his product, like, look at this, how great it is. And people are like, yawn, but it's a great tool.
yes, it's very useful.
And then UGB annexation, you guys have that meeting on this next Monday. And so that whole meeting, we won't have any reports from staff or anything. We're just sticking with just the public hearing because we figure you'll be listening, the planning commission and you guys will be listening to a lot of the staff reports and then a lot of neighbors with their concerns. The ARPA funding, that's something that Angie and I talked about, maybe having a work session with you guys, what still remains, what we as staff think could be useful to use it for, and then if council has other ideas. So that might be something to think about. If you're for or against one thing being funded by ARPA or not. We know there's plenty to do in like sewer and that kind of thing, but if there's some other idea. Corey Hill Stormwater Master Plan, that's kind of in all of the master plans that's at Lower Columbia Engineering, and that's part of the design for third. It really should go up with third and sixth and all the stormwater. The SDC study increase, they're 3/4 of the way done with the master plan for water. They are actually doing a master plan for water. That's one with the capital N. That's the looking into future reservoirs, all the things. And they're getting really close. Once that's complete, then if council still has stomach for it, we'd be looking to go to an SDC study to make sure we're charging enough for the connection fees. We don't believe we are. We don't know what that real number looks like. Public Works Committee still has the sidewalk in-house master plan that they're chewing on. The lake campground project, I'm finishing the documents and the goal would be for it to go out to bid by the end of April. There's lots of pieces. Bear Creek Culvert at Adams, that's part of the bigger springboard project. The MPS, which is the National Park Service sign off, Tim power washed the pit toilets. They inspected them. They're empty. They're all clean. So if we had to open them, they're ready to go. They have to get 2 picnic tables up there and install like 4 walk up and down stump mechanism. We're kind of waiting for drier weather because we don't want to make it ugly, and then that should be done. The Weed Avenue water service, this is the one that deals with Fairway Lane and the long kind of roundabout way they get their water, and it's causing friction. That has not happened yet. That's still Public Works, but it really needs some dry time to be digging it out. Otherwise, we're just going to collapse. And wage study, that's in council's thing, and I don't know that there's interest at this time, or I don't know. But if you guys care, if you want to do it, just let us know. we'll figure out how to restart that. Anderson Park RV site increase. This was an idea from way long ago. Currently, there isn't a plan to expand, and that would have to be some sort of grant. Because potentially we'd be redoing all the wiring or upgrading the wiring that needs it in the stanchions. City equipment, we're still inputting all the stuff into the inventory system, and we got new, that's the Brightly, which was Dude Solutions. We have tablets that are now, the guys are using tablets more regularly. That was kind of one component we wanted to have going because they're going to be getting work orders and everything on the tablet. So we wanted them to kind of get comfortable with looking at GIS on the tablet and searching for water meters and all the things. So that's going well. The water master plan project implementation. This is a placeholder to revisit once it's done. And that was a 23-24. So once we get the water master plan and we know what the projects are that they say are high priority for us, then implementing those. So you guys wanted a placeholder for that. Still we're, like I said in my city administrator's report about the orphan dump site, we have to wait until late spring, early summer to do the testing up there. And then that'll determine whether we fit their criteria or not.
Did you ask them about the logging?
No, I didn't, because I haven't had another meeting with him. He just sent me that in email that he wanted to test. I didn't have a Zoom or anything. Because I bugged him and then he was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about it. Forgot, yeah, I'm really sorry. This is what we talked about, so.
I do too.
Anderson Park boat ramp. This one's kind of a little bit, I have not sent it to Parks Committee. That's the Anderson Park one that would go, that's behind the Park Host site. So I haven't sent that to Parks. They're kind of chewing on.
Yeah, so yeah, probably need to send that to them because I don't know if the one behind the Parks Host site is really the one we want to do. Because of the way the traffic flow is there, to then jackknife your trailer and go down in there. I mean, it needs to be.
Yeah. That's
Most everybody's using the junction, the confluence.
okay.
By the horse arena.
Okay.
And they're tearing it up too. So.
Yeah.
And we got a guide that's working it now during steelhead season.
Oh, okay.
They're running. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the one we talked to the fisheries about was the one behind the Park Host. And we talked about lots of options at the time. We talked about metal grading or concrete runners or whatever wouldn't get washed away at times because it's going to have to be below grade, whatever we do. But yeah, I could send that to them.
Okay.
Just put that on my note. Welcome sign replacement. This one was kind of a one-off mention. JR had mentioned maybe replacing it, and then I didn't kind of hear any more about it. So I left it on here, but yeah. Do they want it to be a community project? Does council even want to do anything? Do you want it off the list? I don't know. Let me write down the.
So I know the one at the lake.
Yeah.
I know Donna was looking at that one and just, you know, it's still pretty sound. It just needs repainted. So it's like, yeah, maybe a community project, or school kids or.
Yeah.
Or something.
Some artist.
Yeah.
Because I know Sally repainted it a number of years ago, probably 8 years ago. She went and touched up all the stuff. The other one that I kind of need council's determination on, that's not an entrance sign, but is the Hawkins Park sign.
Yeah.
When we had that investigated, it was going to be like over $1,200 for someone to fix the wood and rejoin it because it's split, kind of biscuit it together. Or do we take it out and like take it to the museum and then put in the standard parks ones like every other park has? So there's those kind of options too. If you guys really like the wood ones.
I can ask the committee too.
Yeah,
They might like to weigh in on that. So it's the lake and Hawkins.
no, what he says, what Dale's saying about the lake is the welcome to Vernonia sign by the lake, not in the lake.
Okay.
It's just Hawkins is the
Okay.
only one with wood left.
That's Susan Miller's sign carving. The big one you're talking about.
At the lake, is she the one that lived up on Cloud Sky Mountain?
Yeah, Miss Mount, she's the one that carved it.
Yeah, that's the one by the lake that is, well, the city of Vernonia one. The one that I'm talking about that Therese wants Parks to look at is the Glenn Hawkins. Because it's like him with a survey thing.
Yeah.
It's cool, but it needs to be repainted. But when we looked into redoing it, it really needs to be separated and biscuited together and then sealed and repainted, which was like a $1,200 price tag.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, so maybe that's something, if some community.
Phil Hawkins would.
Yeah, well, he had talked to me about redoing it. The family had, Bill's family, but then it kind of quit engaging with me. We found out the price and everything and then, but I don't think the price was a problem for them, but they just kind of quit talking about it. So we could always re-up with him too and say, we'd like it. I don't know that I know any carvers that could replicate it so much so, but maybe somebody could.
Not a city sign, but if we had a group that was trying to touch up signs, the one at the highway is
So that's something, a number of months ago,
embarrassing.
well, a number of months ago, Janice McGuire came from Intercultural.
Mhm.
And so at some point, whoever owned it, which I want to say was Pride, but maybe it wasn't Vernonia Pride, donated it to the city.
Yeah.
So it's a city asset.
Is.
But Intercultural wanted to fix it. And I said, okay, well, there's no permit that allows it to be there. It's just there
Mhm.
from what I could find. I don't know that if you pulled it
Yeah, we
out,
should remove it. We should
then,
fix it there.
yeah. And Intercultural wanted to know back then, well, first I said her group had to vote about it because I wasn't going to ask you guys until they came to me and said, yes, we would like it donated to Intercultural so we can fix it. That she has not come back to me yet with if that vote was ever held or anything.
We check in on that.
Yeah, I could easily ask.
It needs to be.
Which sign are you talking about?
The, hey, it's down here to Vernonia. The-
Oh, I know all about it. I've been working on that project myself personally
For Intercultural?
through them.
Oh, did they vote to ask council for it to be donated to them? Do you remember?
Well, the original print was Chuck Hernick's drawing.
Okay.
And so Tony Hyde and I have been thinking about, I need to contact the state. I actually contacted Dan Brown. He knows all the information about Dan Brown, knows all the information about it,
Okay.
the history of it. I stopped and looked at it a couple of months ago because I was going to take it all apart and bring it to Vernonia, and Tony and I were going to make a new one. So you're shaking your head. So
Yeah,
Repaint.
I would hesitate to disturb anything because it's there. It's, from my recollection, it is simply there by the good graces of the owners of the property. And don't talk to the state. Don't talk to anybody because you got to be careful what you ask because they will probably come back with an answer that says, oh, it needs to go. So I personally would never ask any officials anything about that. I just do it and magically have it appear
So
all
that's-
beautiful again.
That's what Janice was proposing is some sort of redo and then you just go down there with no fanfare and remove and replace the panels on it. I don't know. I don't even know if it would roll. I don't know if it's got tires.
it's only got 3 wheels on it out of 4.
Oh my,
I've checked it all out.
okay. So yeah.
But anyway,
If Intercultural Society voted and wants it donated, I don't see why the city cares if they take it over and maintain it. But I didn't want to ask you guys the question ahead of us doing that.
So Intercultural Society is the holders of the money from the grandstands, correct?
Yes. Well, I don't know what monies they have or.
That's all gone.
Okay, so they donated it somewhere or returned it?
Return it to us.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, that account's gone.
Okay, because that would have been a really good opportunity to have funds to do the repair.
I don't know.
It would-
Well, I think I mean,
Yeah.
that's why they do fundraisers,
Yeah.
right? So they're collecting funds. So if they're interested, and Janice, I'll maybe call Janice tomorrow, pick her brain about if that vote was held, and if she's interested, then maybe your May meeting, she would come and we would do some sort of donation of it to them so that they can move forward with their project. Right? Okay. Okay, so, sorry, I was writing something down in my brain. You said something about parks. You're talking about parks.
I'll ask Parks what their opinion is on the wooden Hawkins sign.
But then you just said something like,
Can
can
I
you check into that? And I was writing it down, but then we started talking.
Just about that sign,
Oh.
to see if they are doing anything,
Okay.
planning to do anything about it. Because if not, then
Yeah.
it'd be nice if someone did.
They're going to say, get a hold of Rick Hobart.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean, I just need to know
Because-
if their group voted. If they voted, then I can bring you guys a donation document.
I don't think so. They have.
Okay. Because I wanted some movement by their committee before we spend our time getting the donation thing and all the things. Okay. Sorry, I'm writing, so I don't forget. So when it comes to the city welcome signs replacement, we're thinking it's community-based and we should look for someone to pretty this one up down by the lake. What do you guys feel about the one, repaint the one at the entrance here? Are you thinking something totally different? Or,
I don't have a problem with the one by the entrance. My only complaint about it is that the way they have the cable strung up for the banners, when there's a banner up, it blocks the sign as you're driving into town. I've noticed that
when
lately.
you're coming down the hill?
Yeah, coming into town,
Yeah.
heading north. I forget what was the banner for recently. There was a big
Easter.
banner up.
Oh, it was Easter,
And
but
it
that was an
literally, like,
odd-sized
You
banner.
couldn't see
Yeah. That's a
the
super,
sign at all
That's-
until you were past the banner, which
Yeah.
was like right there. Like,
yeah. And I
it
think in the
blocked it
future,
entirely.
we would tell them, put it to the far
To the
right,
right.
not the left.
Yeah.
Because when you have the low banners or,
Mhm.
Jamboree or the Coat Fair, they're all the smaller ones that don't block that same way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
they
put
should
that-
be putting them to the right because
Yeah.
there's nothing on the right that's going to block their banner.
No,
But
no.
the banner
You'll still
fully
see
blocked
it.
the sign. It was larger.
Yeah,
than the
and it's not even, it's not a weird, it's a weird square instead of a long rectangle. To the right, got it. I'll let them know that too, because when I call Janice. So are we thinking maybe try and get a community group to paint that one as well? And then look at a redo, because I think Gates or somewhere came up where Banks.
Banks got one.
I actually brought that up
Yeah.
when we were talking about it.
So is that, see if I can get artists to
See if we can
read
hurry it up.
the two for now, and then if it's interesting, or if we find
I know the support logs or half logs are pretty well gone, and decayed. The sign's still pretty nice to look at, but the support that holds it up is pretty well shot, so.
did,
Plus, when we were talking about it, we were talking about lighting up the sign too as well.
well, that's getting done by the electrician, putting the
Right.
panel in, so it will have light on it.
Yeah.
But do you remember how it's affixed? Would you have to totally deconstruct the sign to replace the supports?
I think you could take it off the logs and then replace the logs.
Yeah. Okay.
if that's the application you wish to,
Well, it's up to you.
Go with.
I'll do whatever.
I was
I've got to
just,
look at it or have
I was-
information
Yeah.
before I can decide on anything.
So initially, I'll look for artists to repaint them. And then you guys maybe take a look at it. And if you want to put it on an agenda to talk about or something in more depth.
See what the
maybe we can call the city of Banks and ask them who did their sign and what the cost of it was, because it's really a nice one. It's got the river rock on both sides columns, and it's
Yeah.
a nice big wood piece in between. It's really attractive.
Yeah.
I think a sign like that would, and no offense to Michael Snow, Michael did a great
Yeah.
job on it, but
Yes.
I think it would really, a sign like that would really stand out and would relate to the West Oregon Electric Building and
Yeah,
that type of architecture, if you will.
Yeah. And the only thing that has me a little concerned about a new sign, which I'll have to look into, is the right of way.
state law.
I don't know how far.
The right of way and well as the highway approving the sign.
Right. To tweak it, you gotta, yeah. So I'll look at that too.
Vernonia signs out there, for weed patch.
So maybe you guys go take a look at it and in the short term, is it repairable for the interim? And then we go for something once we have it fully fleshed out with the highway. Because my concern is, are they going to trigger some sidewalk? Because we're messing with, does that make sense? And then all of it. Yeah. Sometimes when we ask the questions, we just open a can of worms.
Totally makes sense.
Okay.
State.
And I still, I'm a newbie here. I've only been here since, 06. And I still remember coming over that hill. I still have that feeling coming over the hill every time I come into town of I'm home. There's my sign.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to, we have consistency there, kind of, between that and the one by the lake. And that's it's part of Vernonia. And the reason I'm not smirking at you guys, I don't want to be like Banks. I mean, they have a beautiful sign. It's great, but that's Banks and this is Vernonia's. And I still recall in Colorado, the designer of their new off-ramp, on-ramp came up with a similar design like that with the standards, and it looked kind of like the West Oregon building sort of stuff. And it's like, it's going to just bring all sorts of people to our town. And it's like, dude, it's an off-ramp. Nobody cares that it's pretty, to be honest. But you have to understand what it used to be. And then they developed this multi-million-dollar thing and it cost a fortune and nobody wanted to pay for it. But I love the history of it and I'd love to see it repainted and restored. And wasn't that actually part of the last Ford family cohort had talked about doing that over decorative log frame for coming into town. They couldn't do it because log trucks might knock it over. But it was part of what they were talking about, then incorporating the sign there. And I don't know, I think that there's enough artists, old and new, in town that I think would welcome the opportunity to get involved. That's just me. I mean, that's my opine.
Yeah, we can go look at it.
Yeah. The last one is the Vernonia Lake boat ramp. So I did go after my discussions up on 6th Avenue. We went to 5th Avenue to talk about that stormwater, and Ernie caught us, as I said. And Jeff did his best. It's not pretty, but it's functional. But Robert that is getting us an estimate for engineering, because they have done a number of boat ramps being in St. Helens. And so they're getting an estimate of if council was interested in having them design one so we could go for a grant to put in a new boat ramp there and fix the approach and everything, what that design estimate would be. So, because I didn't want to just say go for it and then have it be some crazy number we aren't okay with. So that's where that's at.
But the drop off is
Yeah.
improved for now.
It's not pretty.
Yeah.
It's not what we all want it to look like, but it gets boats in there with a heck of a lot more ease than they were getting in there with.
So I happen to be
Put
there.
a boat in?
No,
Oh,
there was a boat in Saturday.
it's not some crazy angle that's causing trouble. It's
Didn't get to see them. I
Oh.
just see the boat was in. I see the tire tracks. I was looking to see if they had any issues. It didn't look, you could hardly see that they'd been there.
Oh, okay.
So they weren't spinning and digging out. I don't know. I think they had a 4-wheel drive, but yeah, when I pulled up there that morning and because they dumped fish the day before and then I went back down, try to get my next limit and doing some smoking, but anyhow, they hadn't dug out. They did the ramp. And then they had the box scraper down there doing the parking lot, trying to get those holes filled back in. Jeff come over and I said, well, are you gonna dig out? He kind of gave me this typical Jeff answer.
Yeah.
And,
He's nervous. He is nervous to
yeah.
go in the.
Well, he just, well, you got to dig 100 feet. And I go, no, Jeff, it wouldn't be that far. And I don't know, if you guys were gonna wait for Robert to do it or what, it's just whatever, but, just kind of reiterated that, well, we just need to dig that kind of on that same slope. So the trailer actually goes into the water. So the boat actually floats off.
Right.
So I don't know. I tried fishing there. He was off scraping with the backhoe somewhere and I thought they weren't going to do it. I come back later and then they dug it out. So I don't know if it spurred it or
I think you probably spurred it.
Okay.
I had mentioned it, but he was very nervous about, because he wasn't sure. It does look like, or it originally looked like you would just go forever on that riverbed, right? Because
Yeah,
it looked
just
just
rock.
like rock forever. And even Jerry, when Robert and I were down there, Jerry Budge was fishing and he just got out and he looked the same level the entire way he's walking. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's clear out there. So we were nervous and I said, well, at least try, because there's no point if they're still just having to drive way out into the lake to get off their trailer, it's still not solving their problem.
Yeah.
So I think he took your advice. Was like, people are going to complain about I'll go out the water.
Few questions. Did the WOAC damage get fixed down by the lake?
I'm not sure. I haven't personally looked. You mean the
West Oregon.
bike hub? I connected the
Well,
two parties,
The
but I
bike hub, but also where they had, what did they do? They made like
don't
big
believe
ruts.
they have done the paving.
Okay, because I know
Yeah.
the Parks Committee was wondering about
Yeah,
that.
there's that once they get, and I could call Dawn again and see if their line showed up, but I don't know. That was back order or
They
something.
still aren't.
Okay.
Nothing.
Yeah, I thought, he said he would call me when they thought they were done so that Billy and I could push that along with the contractor.
Okay,
But I don't know, I just connected the parties as far as the bike hub because Riley said he had an extra one.
mhm.
And I said, well, then that probably helps the contractor getting it for cost, or getting it for what you paid for it versus going hunting something that doesn't look the same.
Yeah. What's happening with not, because didn't we approved for that to go to what, design engineering?
They're doing the phase one. A different engineer at Lower Columbia is doing state and not phase one.
Okay,
They're still working.
is that still on here?
It was never on here. It was in the budget.
Okay,
It's in the budget as part of
And they were, with extra money coming around, a ready-to-go project.
right. We were getting them shovel ready for infrastructure funding. Yeah.
so is that happening? What's happening?
There's a lot of money in the influx, nothing specific to streets yet that we've seen.
But has that been done so that we're ready for
No, they're
funding?
still finishing them
Still working.
because all of there phase one is like, what do we have to do to like try and make it, most of the sidewalks, the curbs are so low because of the height of the street and all that stuff. So they're still working on those designs.
Mhm.
I could check with Robert on where they're at and which engineer is doing it.
Okay.
So on this first one, Josette,
Yes.
tying
Time.
into springboard for the fountain doesn't sound like we're fixing the water that's getting into the sewer.
Well, that's I and I.
It's not tying in. It was preparing an overflow. One of the things we had talked about that would fix this sewer is the manhole lining. And we found the company that can do that. That's one of the things why I wanted to have an ARPA discussion with you guys to have you say, it's worth it to spend the majority of the rest of the ARPA on lining the worst offenders, or you don't want to do that. That's one of the things I wanted to have in the ARPA discussion.
Okay.
Because there are a number, probably 8, that are awful with their infiltration in the manholes.
And that falls under I and I master plan, right?
Yes, that's up, the Corey Hill I&I, Clatsop manhole, all of that was, how is this either stormwater or water table water getting into the sewer? Yeah.
Which by getting those fixed, I think it would make a big difference on the fountain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the overflow too was just kind of a safety mechanism too, because should springboard proper and all those lots behind it, the old Jim Brunsman property get developed, we're building as if those are all getting developed. So the overflow, the offshoot, all the things right now, we're kind of in discussions because where everyone's driven into springboard, they've been driving over someone's property, which was Jim Brunsman's before he got divorced. Well, now someone else owns that. So we have to get easements, and then we have to talk to Ruben and Robert are formulating discussion points for Bateman's and Hollenbeck's, because they own, their 2 property lines are the crux of where you turn off of Weed into springboard.
I wonder too, do you think the storm drain project on 3rd and Columbia,
Those are just going to help.
they're going to help,
Yeah.
right? Because that's where we saw, remember, like there was a ton more water at
Right.
that point
Well, and
coming down Weed, and suddenly it was like gushing. You're
right.
like, where is
So
this coming from?
putting the, closing the holes in the
Mhm.
tops, we did that. The guys did a whole bunch of grouting before, in the dry part of fall, they did a whole bunch of grouting. So we're just incrementally, but one of the
Yeah.
big hits is going to be,
Yeah.
right, you're either replacing them, lining them,
Relining the manhole.
spray coating them with something, because that's where we know a lot of it. The staining is getting it into there.
And wasn't there another line there someplace that you thought
Where today?
a lot of water was coming in from and nobody knew where it went through backyards?
Yeah, that's the one Dale kind of daylighted on Second.
Okay.
And that's the one where it's weird, like the sewers coming out here. There was a stormwater that went around there. It's a mess. There's a few of those. And
That's,
part of Ben kind of capturing all that is to get all those weird things and ground truth them and figure out what really exists, what's been totally gone, so that we are looking at the real picture. So all that's kind of
so,
contributing, not as fast as everything.
so that water on Second that is a problem is actually is water coming from above on 4th behind the old school. Is that the water you're talking about?
Water on Fourth is dealt with because that comes down our new pipe and gets to Nehalem.
Okay.
Is where we have had a lot of water behind the homes where Danners used to live. And then Francis that lives on the downhill side, there must be a spring or something because his
Okay,
basement is constantly wet.
okay.
So we need to figure out where that is and figure out how to cut a break in it and get that to the storm system So it quits kind of inundating in the ways it is in the drains and all the things like on Francis's, it's a floor drain that it's capturing it and it's going to the sewer, not
Okay.
stormwater. So there's a lot of old time stuff we're just gonna have to piecemeal and try and start chunking away at them.
We're picking up the lost pieces
Yeah,
Yeah, the turning over the rocks.
of this
Yeah,
taxpayers' dollars.
I have a question that kind of relates to sidewalks and
Yeah.
Bear Creek and the sidewalk that sloughed off there on Missouri, Madison.
Madison.
And we said we're going to do a 2 to 3 month study and watch it, see if it's dropped.
Measuring,
How's that going?
it's not moving
Okay.
as of right now. I think he's got 4 more read dates to do or something.
So we're getting close to,
So potentially what we talked about doing is popping those panels, fixing the gravel and re-pouring just those panels. If no
Good.
movements
yeah,
happen,
I just was kind of wondering about that.
that's going to be the most cost effective ahead of totally redoing the culvert. We don't want to spend a ton of money because some point we're going to have to redo the whole thing and dig up Madison and make it all pretty and better. But this isn't that point if we can help it money wise, because we're hitting, the hope is to hit ODF and W for the R&E grant for the docks and the walk-on dock at the boat
Yeah.
launch. And then, yeah, we have a lot of things we can pay for with ODF and W money. And the culverts, or a web, that's through Maggie. That could be an option too. But that's a lot of work in those riparians and creek and waterways.
Sam did mention in the last Public Works meeting that one of the neighbors down there, I don't know how, I can't remember how the discussion went, but anyhow, they did go, oh, it's nice to see the city did recognize there's an issue here. They felt like they were at least being paid attention.
Oh, good. Well, they probably see Mitch out there in his neon yellow sweatshirt measuring across the street and from the things and with his little checklist.
People like to think if they don't see it happening, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not usually.
Well, and people usually, that is a tell if they can see bricks, mortar, movement,
Seeing the paint.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, they are paying
they're
attention
doing
to this.
But yeah, he said it in the last 4 that he's told me about, he's like, it's not moving. Whatever happened must have happened way long ago and it's just at a settle point or
I
something.
think it's during the big floods.
Yeah.
Right.
And I had one more on the lake campground project,
Yes.
and maybe somebody's looked at that real close. The burner plot that we're going to build the campground around. How sturdy is that? It is out of cement, but how,
Hey,
I guess what I'm looking at is
I can tell you when I hit it with the D5, it didn't move.
it didn't move. But I just don't want us to end up in another situation like the grandstands. We get all this built around it and then it starts crumbling or something.
Yeah.
Do we fix it or do we tear it out?
Concrete is some of the toughest stuff there is around this country.
I would think it's the same age as my building, right?
Yeah.
And that is, we had an engineer test it and it's hard as, it's not going anywhere. We were worried about if the trees fall inside, if something hits it, are we risking ourselves for people trespassing and walking in there even without permission? Is that dangerous for us? And they were like, no.
I mean, it's worth looking at. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to have to do something because I don't know if those were air drafts,
They are.
those tunnels,
Yeah,
but now you got these,
Are you going to dig them out? We're going to barricade them?
or you just
I think
fill it.
I would think you would, because I don't believe they filled very far in. I think they just filled the openings. You know what I mean? A little ways in. They didn't pack it. But I think what would be cool is do some sort of metal deadheaded in grate, just so they show there and you can see it's an air channel, but it's not anything someone climbs in or can get in.
But it's opened up on top too.
Yeah, that's something we talked about potentially, either same thing, grading or filling, because I think in Park's mind, that was like a little bit of a fun high spot where you could like sit on top of it with a picnic table or
Yeah.
something. And maybe we fill the middle most deepest spot and put a tree and picnic tables. I don't know what we do, but something.
Well, and design phase should
Yeah.
address all these things.
Yeah, right. To safeguard the city from having some sort of liability.
Liability.
Yeah. And maybe it's that we add some sort of stairs or some way to get up there and, or a sign that says, you're at your own risk, or I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. But hopefully they'll, design, hopefully someone's come across old relics that someone wanted to keep.
I'm just making sure we don't open up to another project like that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately in the initial design, and I think what Parks talked about and what even Skip and Jason ahead of Parks really chewing on it, we talked about the road being right there around it. So potentially, even if someday we had to take it out, it's not like we're built infrastructure right up against it. It'll be a good way to, we'll always have access, right? Even if we had to make it ugly. And then I think before we do phase 2, which would be any hard surfacing or electrical stanchions or things like that, because phase 1's really, a primitive type version, then I think we definitely need to look at whether or not we're keeping it before we go into phase 2. Or get serious about phase 2.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any other things?
any other questions for priority?
Are we progressing on hiring a chief for the next fiscal
We
year?
have not done anything with that.
What needs to happen?
Well, honestly, I haven't even thought about it. Potentially, what we would do is post internally. We're kind of waiting to get a full staff and get kind of like our feet under us before we were going to start doing that, but
Kendall's back Friday.
he is. But the 4th person isn't
Uh-huh.
even hired yet. So kind of like
Yeah.
letting that dust settle or getting someone to academy. But potentially we'd post internally because we have 2 candidates that potentially could be a chief in the current staff. And that's typically how you do it if either of them express interest. If they do not express interest, then we would go out and just post. As a city, we haven't had the best of luck with going out.
I think there is interest in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sherry, I cannot hear when you speak.
I said, I think there is interest internally.
I don't even know what you're talking
The
about.
chief position.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, I did.
Whether or not because it's not in this fiscal year budget, right? But usually if either of the parties that are current employees, I believe both of them could be interested, right? In that position. And we haven't had the best luck going out.
No.
For a chief, because typically you get someone from a bigger place that wants to make it all new, and that doesn't always fare very well, is how I put that. But if that's something that council definitely wants to go out, then that's something I'd need to know.
To go out external?
Yeah, if you were just like, if everyone was adamant, we're going out only.
I would prefer not to go out.
Okay.
I'm with you. Not that we're making a decision, just.
No, you're
Yes.
not. You're not. I'm just kind of, if that's something you guys want to keep talking about, then I want to keep bringing it back.
Yeah, I think we probably want to have a workshop. Bring us the numbers, the logistics of it, or,
The numbers, meaning the budget,
yeah, I mean,
but we're going to go through that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all going to see
Budget.
what's available in there.
in this next,
I mean, we would leave a police chief line item, assuming someone comes in at a certain step, right? Because at minimum, it would be the step if the internal people applied, right? Potentially, you're paying more steps if you're getting someone from the outside, only because,
and I think there's a whole discussion around the contract. Are they contract? Because we're seeing what's being able to occur now, basically a working chief.
Yeah, he's just an acting supervisor. He's not
Yeah.
actual.
But I mean, but the department is operational with that administration.
Yeah,
It's a working position.
right.
And before it got to be where it wasn't hardly working position at all.
Right. It was more
It
managerial.
was all managerial and very little work. And I think,
We're kind of,
my opinion is it needs to be more work.
we're too small to not have my position and a chief's position actually doing work as well.
Well, we can then, I guess, address that in the contract, but we're not intending to go chiefless.
Yeah,
I'm not.
and again, I just know, how comfortable the current officers are in being in this position.
One of them, the one
The one.
expressed interest.
Yes.
Okay. And I assumed as
Yeah.
much, but
But I believe they're similarly potentially on paper matched, so you could have two applicants, right? I don't know that the other one even has interest, but he may, so. I'm just saying that, like, that's
it
what,
just seems like we need to, awkward here to discuss that. It'd be awkward in budget to discuss it.
well, I think,
That's why I'm just,
What are expectations of the quote new chief? would
I'd like
be?
to not launch the discussion at budget. I'd like to say, is that something we're looking to do? Because I think it's
well, I don't think we, I don't,
logical and deserved.
I think we don't have to even discuss it at budget. I think we put the money in that we're planning, that based on the steps or a step higher or whatever that would be. And then you guys, we have a work session to develop a new contract. And potentially that's with Ruben, getting you maybe a draft contract from other cities that's worked well for other cities, that's beneficial to the employee, safeguarding for the city, that kind of thing. And you kind of keep the people out of it and you just work on the document that you guys want for the city.
Right.
Yeah.
But you guys could schedule that at your next meeting if you want, right? We want to start developing the new contract.
Right.
That's, and then we could bring, here's what you have for money, here's what typically would be given to them in a boilerplate contract that matches the CBA or the employee handbook or whatever. But I'm sure somebody's got one already going. Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to attend William Kendall's graduation on Friday.
Good. I'm sorry, I'm writing myself a note, so I gotta ignore you guys.
Yeah.
I might initiate that with Ruben and just say, council discussed the priorities work session. The intent to want to start developing a contract for the coming up thing. Can you please look at other cities and get something going so that they can have a work session about it?
Yeah, I'd like that.
Okay.
I mean, I understand wanting the dust to settle, but I also know that there's still been holdups in the hiring process for the next person. And so at some point, I think someone's acting like a supervisor, but we're not making any moves to let them be a supervisor.
Well, being a sergeant, he
Or to
already
have
is
a supervisor.
Right. He be the supervisor,
We
right?
didn't really have a whole lot to supervise right now, but we will have.
Right, potentially even.
So,
That person would have 3 employees, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, I got that one.
Okay, anything else? If not, I'll adjourn the meeting at this work session at 7:40 PM, meeting adjourned.